that note, it's time now for us to switch our focus and shift to a very interesting conversation that we're going to be having up next. This is going to be on the moral economy, reimagining capitalism for a transformative century. And in fact, for this session, may I please request to come up on stage Ms. Marianne Williamson. She's a #1 New York Times bestselling author on spirituality and metaphysics as well, 2020 and 2024 Democratic presidential candidate as well. Ms. Williamson, if you could kindly walk up on stage for your session and kindly address the gathering.
I don't see a clock. Could someone give me a clock or a watch or something? It's over there and I can't see it. I'm so sorry. I can sort of see it. Okay, I can sort of figure it out. Hello, namaste. It's wonderful to be here with you. A real honor. And it's been very interesting for me as an American to be in the presence of such an optimistic group of people. There is hope in the air. There's possibility in the air. There's great business success, an ascension of the capitalist model doing very, very well in your country. I congratulate you. And also, as an American, I cannot but feel the comparison because my country is not in a good mood. In my country, there is great anger and there is great sadness. And among millions of Americans, including very, very powerful people within the business community, there is the constant question, how did we let this happen? What were we thinking? And what millions of people are coming to understand are the ways in which we were not thinking. We were not thinking about the whole. We were thinking about our lane. And business particularly, it can become very tempting to keep our eyes only on the charts, only on the data, only on the statistics, and only on the success that applies to our field. We were thinking in terms of short-term profit. People were thinking in terms of competition. People were thinking in terms of success that was very much a 20th century model. And we felt, as you feel, that we didn't have to worry about some of those other bigger questions because, for instance, we felt about Obama the way you feel about Modi, the excitement that was in the room last night. So some of the issues that we thought we didn't need to care about because, you know, those people have that handled. But in a democracy, there is never a guarantee that those people will remain in power. And what my country has learned to great sadness and even horror is that just making a lot of money is not enough to necessarily protect us. Having worldly, even capitalist success will not necessarily be enough to protect us from forces which might threaten. Now, the name of this conference is that this is a decade of disruption, and this is a decade of disruption. And I know from having talked to people here that because of your huge size, your huge power, and now your huge capitalist success on the ascension, there's a sense that you will be able to withstand whatever other worldly disruptions are occurring. I say to you as an American, we thought that too. And not only that, but we now see that many in the business community, not only in the business community, but in the entire society, should the disruptions continue the way they are now, and I know that everyone here realizes that that includes a great dissembling in the United States of America, then the powers that be in India will need to do more than just protect India. You will need to hold a space for what a powerful democracy can be in the century that unfolds ahead. And that will be a place of power not only for India, but for the entire world. The second part of the title of this conference is not only the decade of disruption, but the century of change. And I know that no one here needs to be reminded. We don't know yet what kind of change. For the world at large, indeed, it could go either way. Now, I'm not saying that the answers don't exist. I'm not saying that there isn't in India, in the United States, in Europe, in Africa, in Asia, everywhere. We have the answers. We have the ways to answer the tremendous challenges that lie before us. Those challenges, however, are too many for us to ignore. Whether it has to do with climate change, whether it has to do with nuclear energy, whether it has to do with AI or anything else. Something happened in my country back in the 1980s in the state of Wyoming, where there was the largest conflagration of fires, forest fires, than had ever existed in our history. And what happened that summer was that there were a lot of smaller fires, and those smaller fires all fit the category of what was considered acceptable burn. Just let it burn. But that summer, in a way that completely changed how forest fire management is looked at now, there were too many stress points, there were too many fires otherwise considered acceptable burns happening too close together at the same time. There are things happening in the world. If it was only ethnic divisions, if it was only religious divisions, if it was only nuclear issues, if it was only threats to democracy, if it was only this or only that, we live in powerful nations, we can absorb it. Too many stress points are happening now. And capitalism should not just be a force that is about the accumulation of wealth. 100 years ago, we thought that. We thought, well, if there's enough economic wealth, more countries will become democratic, etc. We know now that that's not necessarily true. There are enough powerful, authoritarian, capitalist countries. And so we realize that ethical inquiry, when I say moral inquiry, I'm not talking about religious dictates. I'm not talking about who's Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Jew. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the universal questions of ethics, which means more than how much money is made, which means more than short-term profit, which begins in our own environments. Leadership in the 21st century is no longer going to be a top-down model, not if you want to be success in your companies and not if you want to be a successful nation and world. We're now talking about a shift in paradigm from ruthless competition to collaboration. I think some of the most inspiring commentary made about business at this conference that I have heard came from Queen Rania yesterday. And one of her lines was, just because you have the authority doesn't mean you have all the answers. When she talked about humility, let me tell you something. I come from a country being humbled right now. And in that humility, we are learning things. We are going through a moral reckoning that, oh, if only we had been thinking about these things 40 years ago. The top-down model of leadership is over. The issue that you can think about money and not talk about the well-being of your workers, those days are over. The well-being of the environment, those days are over. The well-being of animals, those days are over. And if the business sector takes unto itself the larger issues of ethical inquiry, there is no more powerful vortex of power than what is happening within business. When your prime minister sat here today with a great capitalist titan of your country, those are two equal vortexes of power in your country, just as they are equal vortexes of power in my country. And in this century ahead, take AI alone. Everybody knows this. Everything I'm saying, individuals are already thinking about these things. Individuals in this room are thinking about these things. We're having private conversations about these things. But every business, I believe, should have a division of ethical inquiry. Not with rules, not dictating how things have to be, but a space where the conversation can occur. And right now, too many people in powerful business communities do not feel the emotional and psychological permission to necessarily bring these things up. And I'm particularly speaking to the women in the room, because often it is women in a business situation, in powerful capitalist vortexes, who are asking questions like, is this really the right thing for us to do? And might not feel permission to bring up the conversation the way it needs to be. And yet studies have been done that show when even one person will say, I agree with that, we should be having that conversation, then it opens up a space for answers. We can have answers. The genius exists on this planet to be able to handle all of the stress points that face humanity today, but first we must be willing to ask the questions. Yesterday I was on a panel at Bennett University with two of the speakers here. One was a gentleman named Kunal Dalal. He may or may not be in this room. He is an Indian who lives in the United States now. And one of the students at Bennett University asked, the conversation was about AI, and one of the students asked about the environmental destructiveness that is created by these data centers. This is an ethical question. We can't just go forward with AI not asking these deeper questions, not only about the environmental issues, but also about the human issues. No one in this room needs to be told. We understand the incredible positive potential of AI, but also thinking people know that this thing could get ahead of us. And I come from a country which has already demonstrated what happens when you allow your technological progress to outpace your moral progress. But the reason I mention this is because Kunal then talked about a conversation he had had with a very powerful player in the energy sector who had represented a very old model of how energy is to be exploited at the expense of people, at the expense of health, at the expense of the environment. And they had a conversation about new ways of doing technology so that we can absorb the greenhouse gases that occur. And so even though I cannot really see how I'm doing time-wise, I think I understand. I think my appeal to all of us is that we realize that none of us can afford at this time to be people who stay only in our lane. No sector, including business, can afford to think other people will handle this or other people will handle that. All of us must be thinking about our grandchildren. And yes, I understand trillions of dollars being made. I congratulate you. It's exciting to be in the environment of a society that is this optimistic, but I also remind you what we all already know. Given the incredible challenges that face the human race today, you being yourself a nuclear power, there is not enough money that any of us could make that could guarantee to protect our children and our grandchildren should things go terribly and desperately wrong on a global level. It's not too late. It's not midnight yet. I do remind you, again, you already know this, one of the major powers in holding forth the light of democratic possibility is benched for now. I promise you as an American, we're doing everything possible to change that. But for right now, everybody else has got to carry the big questions. And we can as a human race. Whether we come from the United States or India or Europe or Africa or Asia, you know, we're living at a time of two parallel universes. One global order, as the president or prime minister, I'm not sure which, of Germany said yesterday, the old global order is collapsing. But there's another world, described by Arundhati Roy. A new world is struggling to be born. One of the greatest hopes for humanity is that rising capitalist forces in no way be tempted to be part of the collapsing order, but rather see itself as part of the world that is struggling to be born. If we dwell only in the old order and the old consciousness, as Queen Rania was saying, this breeds arrogance. And I know because I come from the United States. And when you're arrogant and when you're entitled, the problem is you are more likely to become blind. Blind to things that you only realize decades later you should never have closed your eyes to. I hope for you, my wish for you, is that you don't have to have a cycle of going up and coming down before realizing all this. I wish you the best, and I also hope not only for your country, but for all the world, that you deepen into the consciousness where we understand that it's more than commerce that we're after. It's more than successful commerce we're after. We're after righteous commerce. We're towards something which truly does have to do with the elevation of the world, the goodness of the world, the happiness of people, the health of the world, and the survivability and the sustainability and the thriving of this world so that we can bequeath it to our children and our grandchildren. A major capitalist master of all things said to me once, Marianne, I understand you, but how are you going to do this? How do I do this? I've got to make money for my shareholders. I said, you're going to have to figure that out. But I'll give you a hint. A spiritual quest will help you. And he started writing me emails. He said, I learned to meditate, and I realized that I have more creative thinking, that my creative thinking is as important as my strategic thinking, that my heart doesn't have to be disconnected from my head, that I can treat not only the colleagues that I work with, my customers, but also my workers and the entire world as part of that which I serve. He rescued his company. His company is even more successful. We are living now at a time of a great rewilding. We're going back to our hearts and who we become, not only in politics, not only in business, not only in every other field, when we realize that a business is a living organism and that leadership involves relationship, changes your company, changes your country, and changes your world. God bless you. I wish you well. Thank you.